Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Daily Red Devil for all of your latest Manchester United transfer news and talk. I hope everyone is doing well on this Sunday morning. We've got so much to discuss on the show today, but before we jump into that, please do me a small favour. Make sure to drop a like on today's video, and if this is your first time watching, don't forget to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Right, the question this morning is in relation to the Manchester derby. Obviously, we play Manchester City 4:30 p.m. kickoff today. What are your score predictions? We'll start talking about that specific game, but I want to know your score predictions in the comments section below. What is everyone thinking? How is everyone feeling about it? Are you confident? I mean, the game doesn't really have that much significance. I know it's the Manchester derby, which is always significant, but we don't really have much to play for, and neither do Man City. I know they're competing for top four, aren't they? But it's not like they're in the title race, and if we beat them, they don't win the title. Or, it feels like one of the most insignificant Manchester derbies in a long time. We're 13th in the table. If we win today, drum roll, we will be 13th. Amazing. That's, that's really something to play towards, isn't it? And if Manchester City win today and Chelsea don't win, then they could go into the top four. So I guess it's a big game for Man City in the sense that if we were to beat them today and Chelsea were to win, Chelsea would be 4 points ahead of them in fourth place, which I guess with only 7 games left to go, I guess that is quite significant. But yeah, for Manchester United at the moment, the aim still has to try and be to finish in the top half of the table. Is that realistic? 8 games left we've got, 27 points on the line. We could end up with 64 points if we won all of our games. We're not going to do that, obviously, but yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because obviously this game on Thursday against Lyon is absolutely massive. That's one of the biggest games in our recent history, realistically, which is a little bit embarrassing to say that a Europa League game is our biggest game. But at the end of the day, it's an entry route to the Champions League. Obviously, we've not performed well enough in the Premier League. We don't deserve to be in the Champions League. But if we can manage to get past Lyon, then is this the quarterfinal or the semi? I think it's the quarterfinal, isn't it? Yeah, if we can manage to get past Lyon, let me just double check. Yeah, so it's the quarterfinal. If we beat Lyon, we would either play Rangers or Athletic Bilbao. So, it's not easy, is it? Even then. We struggled to beat Rangers last time, and Athletic Bilbao have done really well in the Europa League. So, it's not going to be easy. Obviously, the main other teams in there are Tottenham, Eintracht Frankfurt. There's Lazio as well. So yeah, there's 2 of the bigger teams are going to go out. Obviously Tottenham and Eintracht Frankfurt, those are 2 of the favourites. Lyon and Manchester United are 2 of the favourites. So 2 of the favourites are going to go out in this round. I said from the beginning of the season, even when Erik ten Hag was the manager, I said that winning the Europa League was the target. We won the League Cup in his first season, then we won the FA Cup. So the natural progression felt like to win a European trophy. So I'm still sticking with, if we can win the Europa League, I'm not sure if happy is the right word. I mean, obviously, I'd be happy that we've won the Europa League, but I'm trying to get my words out here. If we could win the Europa League, that would mean that my kind of goal for the season would have been met, because I didn't think we were going to get top 4. I think in my prediction, I said we'd finish somewhere between 7th and 10th, and that was with Erik ten Hag as the manager. So it obviously hasn't changed since Ruben Amorim's come in. I think, it's got worse, hasn't it? So yeah, massive game on Thursday. Does he rotate? I'm not sure. I don't think he will, personally. I think he cares too much about his own personal, I don't know what the word is, his own, not quite ego, but I don't think he'll rotate is the short answer. I think he'll probably go full strength, which is a little bit debatable whether we should be doing that, because like I said, if we win, we go 13th. If we lose, we're still 13th. So there's not really anything to play for Manchester United in this game, other than the bragging rights that, beating Manchester City, which some people care about, some people don't care about. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously I'd like to win the game, but if we lose, it's not the end of the world. If we win, it's not, it's not like we're going to be running around the streets celebrating, are we? It's kind of, it feels like one of the most insignificant Manchester derbies in a very, very long time, which is a little bit sad to say. I'd love it if we were second in the table, 1 point behind the leaders, and if we won, we went top. That would be amazing. But unfortunately, we're not in that position. And if anything, we're closer to the bottom of the table, aren't we? So Yeah, but I want to know your score predictions anyway. Let me know in the comment section. I'm going to go with... I think it might be a draw. I'm going to go 2-2. We know that these players always turn up in the big games, so I'm not too worried about that. I think against Nottingham Forest, we were the better team, but they do park the bus, and we are always quite effective against teams that park the bus, although we didn't actually score. But I'm going to go for a draw, 2-2. Yeah, the plant is looking quite happy. It's got one dead leaf on it there, which I should get rid of. Another one there. I don't want to pull it and pull the whole plant down. Yeah, I'm going to go for a draw. But anyway, let's move on from that. Let's move on over to this story about Victor Osimhen. Because the report's coming out this morning. This is coming out from a Napoli journalist. He's got 300,000 followers on Twitter. And they're reporting that Napoli sporting director Giovanni Manna is currently in London holding talks with Manchester United over Victor Osimhen. He says that Napoli are open to negotiating with United over a favourable fee to prevent Juventus from signing Osimhen. So apparently Juventus, as I just said, are trying to get Osimhen. Napoli obviously don't want that to happen. So Napoli are apparently now a little bit more willing to negotiate and are willing to barter with Manchester United, whereas before they were very stuck on, we want this amount of money, either you pay it, otherwise you don't get the player. But now they've quite quickly realised that if they don't negotiate with Manchester United, then it looks like Juventus are going to sign him, which obviously they don't want to happen. So I think that does put us in a slightly better position. I'm just hoping and praying that we get Osimhen. I think he'd be such a good signing for Manchester United. I'm really, really, really not convinced by Liam Delap. I think he's one for the future. I think he's someone who could in a few years be, a good striker. But at the moment, I just don't think he's what we need. I think we need someone with experience. I think we need someone who's, played at every single level. And he is that player for me, Victor Osimhen. He's played in the Champions League, he's played in the Europa League, he's obviously played internationally at various different tournaments. He's played at lots of big clubs in lots of different countries, and I think he's exactly what Manchester United should be looking for. But again, I'd be interested to know who you think we should go for. I think, realistically, we're not scoring goals, and how would you score goals? Well, you sign a proper striker. We don't have a proper striker at the moment, realistically. I mean, Xerxes isn't a striker. Højlund is still developing and isn't ready, I think, definitely isn't ready to lead the line for Manchester United. So, yeah, it's all a bit of a mess, really. A bit of a mess. So, yeah, I'd be interested to see what you guys all have to say about Victor Osimhen. Do you think he's the player that we need? Or do you think we should be looking at somebody else? Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. I'm firmly behind Victor Osimhen. I think he would be absolutely phenomenal. And if that fails, I think Victor Gyökeres would be equally as good. One of those two players is what we need. We need a big world-class striker. And those two are world-class strikers. Liam Delap is not a world-class striker. I'm sorry, he just isn't. He might become one in the future. There's a very strong possibility that in 2 or 3 years, Liam Delap is scoring 15, 20 goals every season in the Premier League. And we're like, wow, what a player. But at the moment, he's not there. So, yeah, I'd be very interested to see how Manchester United play this situation. But at the moment, the thoughts of Liam Delap to me just looks pretty bleak. Yeah, I think it's bleak, realistically. It's not like the level of transfer a team of Manchester United's ilk and Manchester United's stature should be going for. I don't think. And I know people are going to be like, oh, we're 13th, what are you talking about? But that kind of that point kind of proves the point. We're 13th, right? So what do? Oh, we sign a player from a relegation team. And I know obviously sometimes there are good players in relegation teams. I'm not saying that just because they're going to get relegated means that they're bad. I'm just saying that we need somebody who's going to take us to the next level, and Liam Delap isn't going to do that. Liam Delap is a second or third choice striker. Great, amazing, bring him in. But we need a first choice striker. We've already got Højlund, who for me is a second or third choice striker, right? We've got Chido Obi, who's a second or third choice striker, and now we need somebody who is the main man, who's going to play most of the minutes, going to play all of the Premier League minutes, and that has to be Victor Osimhen or Gyökeres for me. So yeah, obviously this is positive that apparently Manchester United have met in London in the last 24 hours with the director of football from Napoli. And Napoli are now willing to negotiate a little bit more than they were before because they want to stop Juventus from signing him, who apparently are also interested. So that's one to keep in mind. Obviously, there is also Hugo Ekitike, who we've been linked to quite heavily. I like Hugo Ekitike, but yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure whether he is world class. Would you say Hugo Ekitike is world class? I still think he's a bit of a project striker. He's someone who might turn good or might just come to the Premier League and struggle. He's got 13 goals in 27 games for Frankfurt in the Bundesliga, which is, it's okay. But if you compare that with Liam Delap, right? Liam Delap's got 12 goals in the Premier League, playing for a team in the relegation zone. So they've pretty much got the same amount of goals and have played the same amount of minutes. So if you're going to go down the Hugo Ekitike route, right? I like Hugo Ekitike, don't get me wrong. One of them's playing in a lesser league, Hugo Ekitike, for Frankfurt, who are one of the better teams in the Bundesliga, right? They're currently third in the Bundesliga at the moment, Eintracht Frankfurt. So you've got either him, who's going to cost you 80 million, supposedly, or you've got Liam Delap, who's playing for a relegation fighting side, so a lot worse team than Frankfurt, clearly, and he scored the same amount of goals. So, I don't know, it's difficult, and he costs half the money. So if I had to pick between the two players, that would be a difficult one, wouldn't it? That's a really good question. So let's ask you guys, if you had to pick between Liam Delap and Hugo Ekitike, who would you go for? If you can only have one of them's 80 million, Hugo Ekitike, and the other's 40 million, who would you go for? Stats-wise, they've both got the same amount of goals this season in roughly the same amount of games. That's a really good one. How old are they as well? They're both 22 years of age as well. So they're the same age, same amount of goals, playing in different leagues. One of them's double I probably would go with Liam Delap if I had to pick between those two, but because I'm not convinced Hugo Ekitike is world class yet, whereas I think Osimhen and Gyökeres are in their prime, aren't they? Most athletes are in their prime around the age of 26, 27. That's like prime age. And then some players keep going and going and going, but 21, 22, they're kind of growing, they're developing. You get to 26, 27, 28, that's when you're in your prime, and that's what Osimhen and Gyökeres are. They're both 26. So yeah, that's what I'm going for, but as always, I'd be interested to see what you guys have to say. Who would you go for? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Very interested to see what you guys have to say. Right, let's see what else. Al says Ekitike isn't worth 80 million. What has he done to justify that valuation? At the end of the day, right, the situations are very different between Hugo Ekitike and Liam Delap. So just to summarise it, Liam Delap is in a team that's about to get relegated. Okay, so he'll want to leave. He'll want to keep playing Premier League football. He's got 12 goals in the Premier League. There are lots of teams interested in him. And Ipswich will probably be forced to sell him, right? So that weakens their hand. So they'll have to take 30, 40 million. Whereas Eintracht Frankfurt they've got 4 years left on Hugo Ekitike's deal. They're going to be in the Champions League because they're third in the Bundesliga at the moment. They're still in the Europa League. They're doing well. And we saw how much Marmoush went for. Marmoush was, 90 million, was it? Let me double check that. So Man City paid... Let's have a look. Man City paid 75 million for Marmoush, and he had scored, to that point, 15 goals in the Bundesliga. So he'd scored 3 goals more than what Hugo Ekitike has, and they got 75 million for him. Okay? So the point I'm making here is Frankfurt don't need to sell. They're going to have Champions League football. They've just got 75 million for for Marmoush, which is a massive amount of money. So they don't need to sell, whereas obviously Ipswich are going to have to sell. That's the reason why one's more expensive than the other. It's like, if you have something you don't want to sell, you can demand more money for it, can't you? Whereas if you have something that you do want to sell, or a player who wants to leave, it makes it pretty difficult for you to say, oh, I want X amount of money, I want this, I want that, because people are just going to be like, well, I'm not paying that, So yeah, that's why I think that position is why it is. But yeah, I'd be interested to see who you would go for if you had to pick between you had to pick between Hugo Ekitike for, say, 70, 80 million, or Liam Delap for about 30, 40 million. Who would you go for? Let me know in the comments below. Yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Very interested to see what you guys all have to say about that one. Right, let's see what else we have got. Right, let's see what else we've got for the show this morning. How are we doing on time? Well, this is a good question. Not a conversation I was expecting to have this morning, but it's a great question. Somebody in the chat says, do you think Ruben Amorim will last next season? That's a great question. Wow. Putting me on the spot there. I'm going to echo it back to the chat because that's a really, really good question there. Thank you for that. So somebody in the chat has asked this morning, do I think Ruben Amorim will last next season? So there's two very, very different answers to this, all right? So I want people to understand this. There's, do I want Ruben Amorim to last next season? And the answer is obviously yes. I like Ruben Amorim. I think he's a breath of fresh air. I think the way he speaks to the media, his honesty, I think he's ticking all the boxes in that sense, okay? And we know he can play good football. We know he can make clubs successful, what he did with Sporting. We don't need to go over it all again. Sporting hadn't won a league title, I think, in like 10 years, and he won them 3 in 4 years. So he's clearly a good manager. He knows what he's doing. Do I think he'll be successful at Manchester United? Or do I think he'll last next season is the actual question. Now, the first talking point on that discussion is probably the most significant one. And that is because Ruben Amorim's contract actually expires in 2 years from now, in June 2027. So this time next year, Ruben Amorim will only have 12 months left on his deal, which is nothing in Football Manager terms. Most managers have 5, 6, 7. Remember when we got David Moyes? I think we gave him like a 7-year... Let me have a look. David Moyes' contract, Manchester United. Let's double check. Yeah, when David Moyes took over from Sir Alex Ferguson, he was given a 7-year contract with an option of an extra year. That was in 2013. So David Moyes was still being paid by Manchester United until 2020. 7-year deal. Crazy. Whereas with Ruben Amorim, they only gave him a 2.5-year contract. Do I think he'll still be here next season? I hope so. I pray that he's still here next season because I like him a lot. I would say, I was going to say it's 50-50, but I don't think it is 50-50. And the reason why is because Ineos have made so many mistakes so far, right? Think about all the mistakes they've made. The ticket prices going up, taking money away from charities, countless other things. Bringing in Dan Ashworth and then sacking him 2 months later. They've made more mistakes than they have made positive things. That's a fact. We would all agree on that. Not sacking Erik ten Hag and then giving him a new contract and then sacking him 3 months later and paying him 20 million. Like, they've made so many costly mistakes. And if they mess up with this Ruben Amorim one, they paid Sporting Lisbon 10 million to take him. They had to give Erik ten Hag and all of his staff about 20 million. It cost us 30 million to sack Erik ten Hag and bring Ruben Amorim in. If they sack him after 1.5 seasons, they'll have to pay him off again, pay all his staff off again. That's probably another 10 million. And then who do they bring in? You know, they're probably going to have to pay another club to, like... So I just don't think they can afford to sack him financially and from a fan optics situation. But at the same time, things in football can change very, very quickly. And what I mean by that is we could go on a run where we lose 10 games in a row and the fans could turn against Ruben Amorim. And once that happens, I would say that he'll be sacked, you know? Because even though the owners think that they own the football club, once the fans turn on a manager, which we've seen in the past, it happened with Van Gaal, I think it happened with Ollie as well. I don't think it ever really happened with Erik ten Hag. I think people were quite understanding of the situation and acknowledged that he'd won us 2 trophies and got us 3rd place in his first season. But fans were starting to turn on Ten Hag a little bit, weren't they? Not so much in the stadium, I don't think, but definitely outside of the stadium, the fans were turning on Ten Hag. But do I think he'll survive next season? I mean, based on where we are at the moment, it's pretty hard to say yes. I'm just having a look. So Ruben Amorim in the Premier League, his points total is 1.16 per game on average, right? So let's just say, for argument's sake, he carries on that form next season, right? From a whole Premier League season, that would be 44 points you would end up on. 1.16 points per game, which is mental. 40 points is usually like the cutoff for relegation. So if he continued in the form that he was now, we'd end up next season on 44 points at the end of the season. I mean, we might not even get to 44 points this season, to be fair, but I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, I back him. I want him to do well, but I can't sit here and 100% say that I think he'll be here in a year's time, to be honest, because, I mean, at the end of the day, it depends on what transfer window we have. Like, there's so many variables in that question, but if I have to answer it, do I think he'll be here in 12 months? I would probably say yes, marginally. And I'm saying yes because, as I said, I don't think Ineos are able to sack another manager and make another mistake. So I think they have to stick behind him. So even if we do go on a really bad run of games, I think they'll back him and stick behind him. Because the thing you have to remember is he's only got until June 2027 on his deal. So there's not very long, really, in his contract. And I think at that point they'd say, "Oh, we'll just wait until his contract expires. We'll give him till then and see what happens." You know, you got to remember as well. Like, Arteta at Arsenal's been there for 6 years and he's won one trophy. Like, I know Manchester United, the expectations are different, but like, if we were to win the Europa League this season and then start the season really poorly next year, like, I think they would be 100% behind him. I think it does just depend on how the end of this season goes. But in short, I do think he'll still be here next season, but I think it'll be very marginal. So yeah, that's my take on that. What else have we got? People are talking about the Glazers selling. That's not going to happen. Yeah, lots of people saying that they won't sack him because they can't afford to sack him. Ant says, for me, I think the key will be the optics for Ineos. If there are not significant improvements, they will sack him. Yeah, fair. I think it all just comes down to money, you know. If we had endless amounts of money and another world-class manager became available and he was doing really poorly next season, I think they'd sack him. But in reality, we don't have that money and there isn't a world-class manager. So, you know, no one can honestly be happy with where we are in the table, can they? As I just said, his points average so far is 1.16 per game. I mean, that's awful. Absolutely awful. It's like relegation form. He's won 6 matches in the Premier League out of 19. That's terrible. We can all agree on that. He's lost more games than he's won. He's lost 9 and won 6. And drawn 4. And when you look at those 6 teams that we did beat, it was like, I think we beat Southampton narrowly. Like, and even those victories, none of them were convincing, really. I think we beat Everton 4-0, but they should have been like 3-0 up in that first half, you know? So we haven't really had like one really convincing performance yet, have we? Realistically. I thought the Nottingham Forest game was decent. We just didn't score. So, I don't know. But anyway, I'm going to wrap the video up here, guys. It feels like a good point to end today's video. I'm rambling a little bit. Thank you very much for watching. I hope everyone enjoys their Sunday. I'm really looking forward to the game later. Have a great day. I'll be back tomorrow morning as normal. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, and I'll speak to you all later. Bye for now. I'm just saying,